and welcome to the Orthodox View, where we discuss latest religious news from an Orthodox Christian perspective. I'm your host, Philip Champion. A local priest in Nigeria has questioned the inaction of his government as he shares the distressing state of Nigerian Christians who are forced to flee their homes because of extremists. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, over 3 million people have been forced to flee their homes in Nigeria as a result of insurgency and conflict by a jihadist group, Boko Haram. Numerous persecution charities have warned of the extreme and brutal violence Christians face at the hand of Islamic militants and extremist groups, particularly in the north of the country. Moreover, a recent report from a Christian charity called Aid to the Church in Need found that more Christians are killed in Nigeria than anywhere else in the world. Father Remigius Ehula, who heads Makurdi Diocese's Foundation for Justice, Development and Peace in Benue State, has raised concerns that the country's national government is doing nothing to support the thousands daily being forced from their homes by extremists. He says, "Show me any place on earth where people are displaced in their thousands and their government or president doesn't visit. Our people are butchered and slaughtered daily." The situation in Nigeria is truly tragic. In the last couple of years, the country accounted for over 80% of all killed Christians in the world. And yet, for whatever reason, we don't tend to hear about it from the secular media. In an ancient work called Apologeticus, attributed to Tertullian, we find the famous proclamation that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the Church. No doubt this will also be the case in North Africa, Middle East, and all other areas of the world where Christians are being persecuted. A joyous event was held in Tanzania over the weekend, as dozens of adults and children were baptized into Christ at the St. Dionysius of Olympus Missionary Center in Iringa. Orthodox Christianity is rapidly growing in Africa, with both the Russian and the Alexandrian patriarchates being involved in active missionary work. 114 people, including dozens of former Muslims, were baptized in Tanzania just last month. This time, according to an Orthodox news site OrthoChristian, 149 souls from villages throughout the Iringa region were united to Christ in baptism with the blessing of Metropolitan Theophilus of Arusha of the Patriarchate of Alexandria. The newly baptized range in age from infants to the elderly. At the Orthodox View, we congratulate the new Orthodox Christians in Tanzania on their holy baptism and wish them God's aid on their spiritual journeys. Last Friday, the 17th of March, marked the feast day of St. Patrick, the Enlightener of Ireland. What may come as a surprise to many is that St. Patrick was an Orthodox saint centuries before the Great Schism in 1054. Because he lived in the 5th century and was a member of the undivided Church, St. Patrick is venerated not only in the West, but also in the East. In the modern West, especially in the US, March 17th has become somewhat of a national holiday. While in many instances the feast is now more of an excuse for partying and drinking, it should first be made into an occasion for reminding us about the main source of inspiration in Patrick's life, the Lord Jesus Christ. But let's talk about the history first. The most ancient sources of information about Patrick's life are two works written by the saint himself, a confession and a letter to the soldiers of Coroticus. The saint was born in what is now modern England in the late 4th century, and at the age of 16 was kidnapped by pirates, taken to Ireland, and there sold as a slave. After 6 years in foreign captivity, Patrick manages to escape and returns to his homeland. Sometime later, he studies for the priesthood, gets consecrated as a bishop, and eventually asks to be sent back to Ireland so that he could preach the gospel of Christ to his former captors. Evangelizing in Ireland was by no means an easy task. The Irish people regarded Patrick with hostility, since he was a foreigner and a former slave. However, the saint was successful in his missionary work and baptized many into Christ. This resulted in churches and monasteries all across Ireland. St. Patrick fell asleep in the Lord on March 17th, year 460 or 461. If you want to learn more about St. Patrick, I encourage you to read his autobiography. We'll put a link to it in the description to this video. Meanwhile, I'd like to conclude this episode with a quotation from St. Patrick's Confession, which in my opinion captures the very essence of his life and teachings. I testify in truthfulness and gladness of heart before God and His holy angels that I never had any reason except the gospel and His promises ever to have returned to that nation from which I had previously escaped with difficulty. But I entreat those who believe in and fear God, whoever deigns to examine or receive this document composed by the obviously unlearned sinner Patrick in Ireland, that nobody shall ever ascribe to my ignorance any trivial thing that I achieved, or may have expounded, that was pleasing to God, but accept and truly believe that it would have been the gift of God. And this is the confession before I die.